I am Johnny Massacre, and welcome to the Johnny Massacre Show. This is the Monday Night Massacre. On tonight's show, Parler is back. In other news, coronavirus update, yay! And finally, the latest Japanese food trends. Who's fucking with me? Give me a hell yeah. So, today, we're going to talk about Parler. Now, I saw online, Parler's back. Apparently, Parler's back. The main rival to Twitter. Twitter is blue, same color as Democrats. Parler is red, same color as Republicans. Is it any coincidence? So, I went online and I Googled Parler to see what was going on. And it looks like it kind of is coming back. Now, I had seen conflicting reports before this regarding what was happening with Parler. Pretty much news being released within hours of each other was completely polar opposite. For example, some people were saying Parler CEO says that Parler may never come back. Whereas other articles were saying, no, Parler is basically going to come back. So I just waited for some more concrete news. Now, apparently, Parler has found a server that isn't going to boot them off. And I went to parler.com and there's some shit up there right now. Now, as you know, because Parler has been taken off the Google Play Store, I believe it's called, and the Apple App Store, you're not going to be able to use the application anymore. You can't download it. And if you had already downloaded it, you haven't been able to use it. So when you load the application, there's just nothing there. So Parler's current form is going to take the same form as Gab. So Gab, which is also like a rival to Twitter, they are only available via browser because if they make an app, Apple and Google are not going to accept it. Now, this is actually kind of a viable model because Gab is making money. They're obviously making money because they're expanding. I've seen them at a video service recently. You can't do that unless you've got money. My friend told me that it's not as easy as people think just to make your own YouTube, make your own whatever, because the amount of money it costs and the amount of investment and backing you need is insane. And so if Gab have started a video hosting service, that's probably the most memory intensive form of hosting you can do. So it means that they're making money, and it means that the model for SNS that is not downloadable as an app, but just purely exists via browser, works among pretty much anyone. So that's what Parler are doing. If you want to use Parler in the future, and they do manage to get through this period where they're not able to make any money and operate, it's going to have to be from your browser. It kind of seems a little bit of a pain in the ass. I don't really want to open my browser every time, but if that's what I've got to do to have free speech, then so be it. So let's go over to some news websites to find out exactly what is going on with this. First, I'll take you over to cnet.com. Check this out. They say, Parler website is back online after Amazon booted it off the internet. The app, which is more popular with users than the website, remains banned from the Google and Apple app stores. After Amazon, Google, and Apple forced Parler offline in the wake of the deadly insurrection of the US Capitol, the social networking company managed to make an online comeback on Sunday. The social media website, which is popular with Donald Trump supporters, has not regained full operability, but Parler's CEO, John Matsy, is reportedly, quote, confident, end quote, the site will reappear in its entirety by the end of January. Our return is inevitable due to hard work and persistence against all odds, reads a post by Matsy on the Parler website. Despite the threats and harassment, not one Parler employee has quit. We are becoming closer and stronger as a team. The social networking site went dark when Amazon stopped providing it cloud hosting services after it was revealed the platform was used to help organize the Capitol Hill attack on January the 6th, which left 5 people dead. Amazon's actions followed moves by Apple and Google to ban the Parler mobile app from their respective stores. The Parler app, which is more popular with its user base, remains unavailable. Questions have been raised over how Parler returned online following its ejection from the internet. The Parler domain is registered with Epic, according to domain's name database Whois. However, an Epic statement published Monday says the company had, quote, no contact or discussions with Parler in any form regarding our becoming their registrar or hosting provider, end quote. So I wouldn't trust that statement by Epic, who apparently are hosting Parler, because any company that's associated with Parler will receive death by association, which is something very popular in totalitarian countries. In North Korea, for example, if you do something bad, your whole fucking family for generations gets punished. And in the current totalitarian tyrannical landscape run by big tech, if you are related in any way, shape or form, if you even so much as replied to a tweet to an unperson, that means you also must be unpersoned and cancelled. So no wonder the people who apparently seem to be hosting Parler are trying to distance themselves from Parler. Probably they had a discussion with the CEO of Parler, John Massey, I believe his name is. My memory's terrible. Definitely Massey is his second name. And they probably agreed, look, just you don't have to be involved vocally. And if anyone asks, just say you're not involved. That's probably what went down, I guess. So the article continues, citing an infrastructure expert, a Reuters, or I should say Reuters report, indicated that the IP address Epic used, and see they spelt Epic with a C and they spelt it with a K here, so this is a shitty journalist. The IP address Epic used is owned by DDoS Guard, which is, quote, controlled by 2 Russian men and provides services, including protection from distributed denial of service attacks, end quote. This is sounding a bit like a James Bond movie. This service is owned by 2 Russian men. Sounds like some narrative to a movie or something, doesn't it? The article says the company that owns DDoS Guard is called Cognitive Cloud LP, according to the report. And here is the evidence itself. It shows that Epic is hosting Parler. Interesting. Parler CEO John Massey didn't immediately respond to a CNET request for comment. So, there is smoke. And where there is smoke, there is fire. So, the embers of Parler were not extinguished. Now, if you read the book 48 Laws of Power by Robert E. Greene, which is apparently the most popular book among prison inmates, there's one chapter in it where he says, when you, and I can't remember his eloquent copy exactly, but let me just try to remember it for your benefit. He said, when you kill an enemy, make sure you cut off the head. You have to completely extinguish the enemy. Have no mercy. Crush them. I believe he said crush them. Because if you don't, it's like a fire. If you leave a few embers, even a little ember can destroy a whole forest, and it can and will come back to life and get you. This is why we, as humans, connect so readily with that trope in Hollywood stories, right? The hero gets fucked and he's nearly dead, but then he kind of manages to survive, and in the end he comes back and wins. This is just part of the dynamic of life, dynamic of life and death and success and failure. And so we relate to it as humans, and what Robert E. Greene wrote is true, and we seek out truth and relate to truth. So it's the same with bad guys and antagonists in movies. At the end, you fuck them up so bad, but at the end, there's that maniacal laugh. They always come back. So this is a real fucking thing. You've really got to make sure that motherfucker is dead. And with Parler, they tried their best, but it looks like they didn't quite burn the severed stump of the Hydra head. Not really wanting to compare Parler to a Hydra. I don't think that's fair, but you get what I'm saying, right? In that mythical tale, when you cut the head of the Hydra, you have to burn the stump, otherwise it comes back. Big tech couldn't burn the stump. Back comes Parler. So, to prove what we're talking about, I went to parler.com, and when you go there on the browser, because remember, you can't use it on the app, forget about the app. There's no way big tech are gonna say Parler is now okay, because banning Parler sets a precedent where they can just ban anyone they disagree with, and they're just going to try to ban anyone who has a differing political ideology, who's not a Democrat. Now you have to go to the browser. On the Parler website, on my browser, it says this. Technical difficulties. Now seems like the right time to remind you all, both lovers and haters. That's fighting talk. why we started this platform. We believe privacy is paramount and free speech essential, especially on social media. Our aim has always been to provide a non-partisan public square where individuals can enjoy and exercise their rights to both. We will resolve any challenge before us and plan to welcome all of you back soon. We will not let civil discourse perish. And then we have CEO of Parler himself, John Massacre, saying, our return is inevitable due to hard work and persistence against all odds. Despite the threats and harassment, not one Parler employee has quit. We are becoming closer and stronger as a team. So the article already said this. And then curiously, there's a few random quotes from people that presumably the CEO, John Massacre, has curated to stay up. And one of them is Dan Bongino, who's a really popular Republican podcaster and radio host. And he says, we will, all caps, never stop fighting. All caps, never. This fight is bigger than me, and it's bigger than Parler. If they're allowed to silence us, they can silence anyone. It stops now. Please stand with us in this fight for liberty, truth, and freedom. So there you go. Parler are defiant, and it looks like they're coming back. So I'm quite looking forward to that. Look, plenty of violent stuff has been used on Twitter. Violent rhetoric has been said on Twitter, and plenty of organizations have taken place on Twitter resulting in violence. Antifa are all over Twitter. It takes a cursory glance and a few searches to come across stuff where Antifa are making death threats, and they're clearly organizing stuff on there, and they won't shut down. There's actually no evidence to suggest that the Capitol Hill riots were organized on Parler, and actually apparently there's evidence to say it was organized on, it was either Facebook or Twitter. And so by that logic, Twitter and Facebook should shut themselves down. We all know why they aggravated to shut them down and why Amazon did, because they want to control the narrative, and they're all left-wing, and they want to destroy any alternative thought, which in this case appears to be right-wing thought. But really, yeah, let's be honest, right-wing people do use Parler, but it's only because they've been made unwelcome on Twitter. And the best thing they could have done was just to not censor Republicans or conservatives or people who don't think like the left on Twitter, and then there would never be these rivals springing up to challenge their dominance. But the left can't help it. They're like Democrats. They're like big government. They want to control every facet of your life, and so therefore you've got Parler. Anyways, rambling a bit now, but Parler is coming back, it looks like. So looking forward to that. Now, in other news, coronavirus news. So I want to talk a little bit about the mental health effects of coronavirus. Now, honestly, so many people I've met recently have said that they're depressed or they've been going through a tough time. And when you ask them about how they're doing, they all say the same thing. They kind of sigh and they feel exasperated and they say, God, shit's been hard, whether it's financially or whether it's just because they've been in lockdown and they can't see people. And there's various reasons, but people just don't seem very cheery at the moment. And I think that is because of lockdowns. I think lockdowns have destroyed people's faith in government. They've destroyed people's social life. They have destroyed people's faith that life is going to be all right when suddenly their freedoms can be taken away at a moment's notice on a whim, and sometimes it feels arbitrary. That means people feel that can happen at any point in the future, and they can see that things might never go back to the way they were before because politicians can get away with doing anything. And I think evidence of that is this. So come on over to the Scotsman, Scotsman.com. They say almost half of young Scots say their mental health has worsened during the pandemic, according to a new study. A Prince's Trust report published today warns that 47% of young people in Scotland, aged between 16 and 25, say the pandemic has negatively impacted their mental health. Now, that is not saying lockdowns have influenced their mental health, but really, what could it be other than lockdowns? The only other thing it can be is the relentless media hysteria that has caused the lockdowns, in my opinion. The article says in total, 2,180 people were surveyed by the Prince's Trust across the UK between November 25th and December the 8th, 2020. The survey showed that more than a quarter of young people, 32%, admit they feel, quote, unable to cope with life. 1 in 3 young people in Scotland feel unable to cope with life since the pandemic, while 63% say they, quote, always, often, end quote, feel anxious and are feeling like they are, quote, missing out on being young, full stop. Wow, a whole generation of people like that, deprived of their freedom. Well, you'd have to say that is to do with the lockdowns, because missing out on being young means you can't go outside. If it's not to do with the lockdowns, then what else is making them miss out? That's literally the only thing it can be, which is what my opinion is, as I stated before we started reading this article. The research suggests that young people who are not in education, employment, or training are even more likely to feel that way and are more likely to be experiencing anxiety. So you've got to be doing something. You don't want to be sitting around at home. And guess what? The lockdowns have made loads of people lose their jobs and parents lose their jobs, which mean more people staying at home, which means more people are going to feel negative mental effects of this. It's really sad to read. Over half, 55%, say it is harder to ask for employment help as, quote, everyone needs it at the moment, end quote. And 66% say that getting a new job feels impossible now because there's so much competition. You know, when people talk about the other negative effects of coronavirus beyond the narrative of the media, which is basically you're killing grandma, people kind of dismiss it out of hand. You know, I've had people say suicide rates are going up, mental health is becoming awful, and alcoholism is going up, domestic abuse is going up. Well, looking at this, it really looks like there's substance to those claims. And this is just the beginning. I mean, this is just the start of all these people having lost their jobs. I saw some news the other day. I posted it on my community section of Facebook saying Australia, some officials in Australia say it could well be the case that even if everyone is vaccinated, Australia will not open their borders in 2021, which doesn't make sense because once you're vaccinated, you can't get the virus and you're not going to spread it. So in light of that, as I said, this is just the beginning. People are going to be even more depressed. More jobs are going to be lost. And fucking hell, I think in the same way that censorship has been building up for years and years and years, and then suddenly it feels like it's all coming at once, which is a kind of exponential upswing. Suddenly it's moving like this. The same thing's going to happen with the negative effects of coronavirus in regards to the economy and mental health. I think it's still building up, but when it fucking hits, economic crash or mental health irrevocably damaged, I mean, fuck. Really, do we need to be doing this anymore? Now, have a look at this, backing up what I'm saying about how mental health is suffering and we need to end lockdowns for that reason and many others. Over on theguardian.com, they say Japan's suicide rate rises 16% in second wave of COVID, study finds. Rise in July to October, particularly among women and children. Contrasts with decline in first wave. Yeah, because with the first wave, the knock-on effects of that were obviously delayed. Okay, can't go to work, still got some money in the bank. And then after that, that's when shit really hits the fan. And as you're seeing, like I said, there's going to be an exponential upswing until one upswing is going to be so devastating, then you're going to really see some shit. The article says suicide rates in Japan have risen sharply in the second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic, particularly among women and children, blah, blah, blah. The July to October suicide rate rose 16% from the same period a year earlier, a stark reversal of the February to June decline of 14%, according to the study by researchers at Hong Kong University and Tokyo Metropolitan Institute of Gerontology. Quote, unlike normal economic circumstances, this pandemic disproportionately affects the psychological health of children, adolescents, and females, especially housewives, end quote, the authors wrote in the study published on Friday in the journal Nature Human Behavior. So, as you know, politicians can't help but politicize the coronavirus, which is pure evil, because it should be the easiest thing ever to agree on. If you get sick, let's heal you. But no, it's hurting these victimized groups. It's hurting these people that we want to vote for us. That's what you're seeing all the time. Biden just came out and said, yes, they're going to help to restructure all these businesses, especially black-owned and Hispanic businesses first, which is just going to make white people feel resentful because coronavirus doesn't choose people based on color. It just chooses whoever it fucking chooses. And so what would those people say when they're presented with this evidence that coronavirus is affecting the health of females, especially housewives? That would suddenly make their brains explode because then they can't necessarily say what they've been saying. So, which is to have lockdowns. It turns out lockdowns are having really negative effects, especially on the victimized groups that you claim to represent. So this is a thing, and that's the data. 16% up Japanese suicide rates, and that is fucking awful. And it's only going to get worse because, honestly, the street outside my recording studio seems to be a good analogy to the rest of the kind of exponential exacerbation of the negative effects of coronavirus. So only recently have about 4 or 5 shops gone bankrupt around my recording studio. So before, one here, one there, maybe 2. And then in the last couple of weeks, blam, 4 or 5 has happened. So you're seeing this exponential upswing in all areas, including mental health. And I just think we need to end the lockdowns as soon as possible. Because the destruction caused by the lockdowns is going to be far worse than the actual deaths directly from the coronavirus, in my opinion, from the data that I've seen. But, guess what? Look at this, people, over on mercopress.com. Biden will reimpose travel restrictions despite Trump lifting some of the restrictions. So apparently, Trump was going to lift restrictions from Europe and Brazil to America, some of the restrictions, because he wanted to start the economy again to avoid all of the shit that's happening now to do with mental health and the other effects of coronavirus, such as suicide, depression, and all that kind of stuff. Trump wanted to get things moving again. But Biden is actually going to close it again. And this is the thing. When Trump was in power, if Trump said that breathing was good, Democrats would have tried to make breathing illegal. Whatever Trump did, even if it's good, they'll just do the opposite. And this is why the Dems are so dangerous. And this is why seeing Biden close America is enough to make certain people despair, because you could certainly question, judging by the Democrats' past actions, whether Biden is actually doing this to help the country or if he's doing it just because it goes against what Trump does because of TDS, Trump Derangement Syndrome. So, more lockdowns. So looking at those stats, they're only going to get worse because also America sets the trend for the rest of the world. And so the rest of the world is probably going to follow what Biden does. And this is why some people believe, 70% of 75 million Americans at least believe, according to polls, that the election was down to the F word, because I saw Biden's debates, and I say this all the time, in the debates, the only thing he offered was higher taxes under the thin veil of green energy, an existential threat to reality in the form of climate change, and a dark winter, and more lockdowns. And would people really vote for that, looking at all those statistics that you just saw? You tell me. You tell me. But then, as you know, recently, some politicians are saying stuff like this. So Cuomo, governor of New York, calls for economy to reopen after strict lockdowns throttled New York for months. You might have seen this news recently. He said in a tweet, "We simply cannot stay closed until the vaccine hits critical mass. The cost is too high. We have nothing left to open. We must reopen the economy, but we must do it smartly and safely." Suddenly, he's changing his tune. For months, nearly the best part of a year, he said, if you don't lock down, you're going to kill people, even though he apparently was instrumental in letting loads of people with coronavirus into nursing homes, which created a huge amount of deaths, most of which came from nursing homes. Yeah, that guy. Now he suddenly changed his tune and says we got to reopen because of the economy, not even because of the reasons I just said, in addition to that. And some people are saying, well, Dems wanted the economy to be closed because Democrat states passed the most draconian lockdown laws because it made Trump's economy look even worse. And would you blame them to do that? You had, I think his name was Bill Maher, a famous Democrat or left-wing kind of guy. He actually said what we need is to crash the economy to get rid of Trump. He said that a couple of years ago. And if he thought that, some other people could think that, especially Democratic politicians. So would it be possible the Dems and Dem-controlled states actually wanted to lock down to fuck up the economy? And now that Trump is going, they suddenly want to reopen it because it's going to make Biden look good. If that's the case, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. But it's difficult to know. You make up your own mind. Personally, I think that might be the case. Other people suddenly saying they want to reopen the economy is Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot, who has Trump derangement syndrome. When her fucking area was on fire and being burned by rioters, Antifa and Black Lives Matter, Trump talked about sending in the National Guard, and she said, hell no, she didn't want it. And so more people got fucked, but I think he eventually sent them in. Yeah, that woman who's super pro-lockdown, suddenly she says, reopen bars, restaurants as soon as possible. So, anyways, the point is that bars not being open and stuff like that contributes to people's poor mental health, contributes to suicide, contributes to depression, because the owners themselves can't stay open, and also your town looks like a ghost town, so people don't like to see that, and all their favorite stuff is being replaced by faceless, big corporations and chain stores and stuff, which is really depressing. And then the economy's just fucked because no one's got any money. No one's got any money to go out and spend and shit. Everything, there's just an exponential downward spiral, and it just depresses the fuck out of people. So what I'm saying is we need to stop locking down, because it's not just about the people who are dying from coronavirus, which is bad, but the knock-on effects of locking down and all that shit on mental health and just the nation's mood ultimately will result in something more of a net negative than just people dying of coronavirus. It's not a nice thing to talk about, but I genuinely believe that. But some kind of good news is this. So check it out over on 21stcenturywire.com. They say over 50,000 restaurants in Italy declare, I am open, defying lockdown measures. This weekend, over 50,000 restaurants in Italy began defying the country's strict anti-COVID lockdown measures in a massive act of civil disobedience, according to Off Guardian. Italian restaurant owners have been spreading their, quote, I am open, end quote, message through the social media hashtag IOOPRO, which means I am opening. And customers have turned the tables on the government. So this tweet shows a video, and it says, this restaurant is open. Police arrives. Customers refuse to leave and shout in unison, get out, get out, get out. We pay your wages from our taxes. You work for us. Get out, get out, get out. And then there's other tweets of other places in Italy where this movement is catching on. For example, in Bologna, which apparently is where some of the best food and coffee is from in the whole of Italy. The tweet says, customers escort police out of the restaurant under the cries of freedom, freedom, freedom. God bless the Italians. And that's happening all over Italy. And apparently it's already spread to other countries across the world, including Mexico, Switzerland, and Poland. And I hope it spreads to America pretty soon. Because if this catches on and this outweighs the prevailing narrative in the media, it means that the government have been wrong. They're just trying to protect their own asses, and the people have spoken. Really, there should have been a vote on something like this. If you're going to be forced to stay at home and can lose your job and you still have to pay rent, there should be a vote on that. The people should vote. The people set up a government to serve the people, and that is not serving the people, forcing them to stay at home and still pay rent. So I like what I'm seeing with this movement. The people are speaking, and this is what needs to happen. With any tyrannical, totalitarian thing, the only way it stops is if everyone at the same time says no. Trust me, trust me, trust me. That is how the tyranny ends. And I know it's difficult because people are afraid to put their head above the parapet. It takes some brave individuals to be the first domino in that chain. But if this catches on because of those brave individuals, that means that we might be able to stop the lockdowns. We remove the lockdowns and we just run the country sensibly and safely. We protect the elderly. We protect high-risk people, obese people, and everyone else. If you want a vaccine, you can go and have it. If you don't, you take your life into your own hands. If you're afraid of it, you can stay at home. If you're not afraid of it and you want to go on with your life as normal, because the very, 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 very small chance of catching and dying from corona is basically outweighed by your own personal freedom, then you should be able to indulge in that. And so, finally for today, Japanese food. So I thought I'll end on a more positive note because all of that was a little bit heavy, as is becoming the norm, fast becoming the norm on the Johnny Massacre Show. But I realized recently when I did a live stream and we talked about food, it actually was really fun. And then even after the live stream, people were chipping in and chiming in and commenting on their favorite foods and stuff. So it's something we can all connect with, even Republicans and Democrats, if they're hardcore on the opposite end of the spectrum. If they met each other and didn't mention politics, definitely they could come together over food. Or even if they do talk about politics, if you introduce the subject of food, that's something we all need to survive. It's the most important thing there is. And so it's just a good topic to kind of forget about all this political madness. Now, I know it's kind of a bit of a dull topic, right? Talking about food. But you know what? I realize for me, it's not fucking dull. It's actually one of the great pleasures of life. So just going to have a quick look at this. Green tea strawberry dessert sandwiches. So over on Japan Today, they got a picture of some bread which is infused with green tea, which is sandwiching some cream and strawberries. The title says, Green tea strawberry dessert sandwiches. Today's reason Japanese convenience stores are awesome. One of the things that makes Japanese convenience stores so awesome is the huge variety of tasty foods they stock. Whether you're after onigiri rice balls, bento box lunches, pre-made pasta dishes, or all sorts of candies and chips, your local konbini, as convenience stores are called in Japanese, is standing by, ready to fill your needs and stomach. That variety isn't static either. Convenience stores are constantly refreshing their product lineups, often cycling in seasonal favorites. This is true. For someone who is self-diagnosed with ADD, I fucking love the way that Japanese convenience stores keep on changing their products. So you have every day you go in there, there's a new type of chocolate, and weird and wild ones. For a country that's supposed to be so reserved, face to face, their desire to express their individuality manifests itself in their creations and food, where their imaginations and repressed extrovertedness, so to speak, really kind of finds itself. You get wild flavors, absolutely crazy stuff. You've seen it with Kit Kats. You've got the rum raisin, you've got sweet potato, you've got wasabi Kit Kats, there are some weirder ones out there, but pretty much everything you can think of under the sun has been incorporated into a Kit Kat flavor, including sake and stuff like that. So that's really good for people who are always looking for new stimulation. There's always something new in the Japanese convenience store. And I've got to say, this particular sandwich, that's not unique to green tea. Those have been in Japanese convenience stores for ages. Sandwiches with strawberries and cream in. Looks weird. You wouldn't see that in the West, but it kind of makes sense because bread in Japan doesn't even have a crust. And it's very sweet because they have got a delicate palate here. They don't like that kind of rustic brown oaty bread. They like smooth white bread. You never see brown bread in Japan. Just doesn't exist. They've got very sensitive palates. So I've seen those sandwiches before, and they're actually pretty good. The article shows the traditional strawberry sandwich that I was just talking about and says, for example, with strawberries being particularly prized in winter in Japan, this week convenience store chain Lawson added the strawberry custard sandwich, pictured above, to its sandwich shelf. A chilled dessert sandwich, it looks plenty tempting on its own, but we imagine a lot of customers are going to be reaching right past it to instead grab one of these absolutely mouth-watering matcha green tea bread strawberry milk sandwiches. How's that for a mouthful? Made with green tea powder from leaves grown in the town of Uji, Kyoto Prefecture, Japan's most respected matcha-producing community. The green tea strawberry sandwich is a comprehensive culinary pleasure concept designed to stimulate an array of taste receptors. I like this journalist. It's pretty wordy and flowery, but it's well written. The rich flavor of the fluffy bread gets a boost of sophisticated, gentle bitterness from the matcha. The sliced strawberries contribute a touch of tartness along with their fruity sweet notes, and the filling of cream and condensed provides their own straightforward decadent sweetness. At 368 yen, the matcha green tea bread strawberry milk sandwich is a 20 yen premium over the non-matcha strawberry sandwich, but this looks to be a luxury we can definitely find room for in our budgets. Right, so this is on sale now. And you've just got to love that. Do you have anything like that, my American friends? I mean, you make a sandwich out of donuts. I've seen that with meat in the middle, which is fucking insane. would you... So it's probably not beyond the realms of possibility you made a fruit sandwich in America, but I'm kind of curious if you have anything like that. I've been Johnny Massacre, and I tell you what, mate, you better be back for the next episode. Otherwise, I'll be coming round your house. Make sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell, because that is what all those other cunts tell you to do. Laters.